Now that we have the infrastructure to actually store files or media, we should go ahead and take a look at how Django allows you to store that. Thankfully, it's pretty straightforward and very well documented. So we're going to look at the documentation because that's where you're going to spend your time depending on what kind of file, what kind of media, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're going to see a very quick example in our code. The Django documentation that you're going to be looking for as we begin to deal with media and files is the Managing Files section under Topics. You can see that it will talk about the various options and even how to use the files in models. Quite extensive, and we'll walk you through a whole bunch of different options, storage, and all of that. And if you pair this up with the documentation in Django storages, you can really get off to a flying start. I'd like to note that if you're interested in how you can handle uploaded files during development, this is actually under the static files section. So this is in a slightly different area, but it is documented as well. Now, the two fields that we're going to be interested in on the model is either going to be the file field or else the image field. Now, today, I'm talking about things as if we are going to be uploading an image because it's a nice, easy way of discussing this where we say, oh yes, you upload an image and then you run it through processing and this way you have a thumbnail or you've modified it in some way or whatever have you. However, you'll note that the image field requires installing Pillow. And for the sake of just avoiding changing the Docker setup or anything of the sort, we're therefore going to use the file field. Now, I know that the image field inherits from the file field, so a lot of the work that you do trying to understand file field will benefit you virtually immediately when you are dealing with images as compared to files generally. In the terminal, the only change that we really need to make in our file is, and file specifically, I mean organizer models, is to simply import file field. At which point I can then go ahead and simply say, yes, I'm going to have a file field here and I'm going to assign it to the logo for the startup. You'll note that because this is a migration, we are making changes to existing data in theory. I am going to go ahead and say null is equal to true so that we don't have to go and provide a whole host of logos to whoever is already in our database. Finally, I run manage.py make migrations so that I end up with a migration file, and you can see it's a fairly straightforward thing. I'm simply adding a file onto our startup for logo. And that's really all there is to it. Now, there is a setting that you can read about in the documentation here called upload to in the event that you want to put it in a specific path, but I'll sort of let you dive into the documentation to see how this is done. So working in Django with the file field and with the image field is actually the easiest part of this. Once you know that you're using Django storages and you can configure Django storages based on existing infrastructure, and it's really the existing infrastructure that takes the most time, you are absolutely off to the races on making sure that you can get data into the bucket so that you can then have tasks on a queue that reach out to that data, pull the data in, process it, and either issue it back out to the bucket or whatever you're using for storage, or to process it in some other way.